So, hey everyone, welcome to Group Thinkers, the podcast from RKD Group. On each and every episode, we have someone influential from the nonprofit marketing space that joins us to talk about something and to talk about things on the leading edge, to help give us tips and to help us think forward into the future. I am your host, Justin McCord. I am joined, as always, by Ronnie Richard. Ronnie, Happy New Year. Good to see you.
Happy New Year to you as well, and to Ric Flair behind you as well.
That's right. Happy New Year to Ric Flair. He had his, we're on the heels of the national championship football game, and I saw Ric Flair had his Georgia Bulldogs robe on pregame yesterday. So he was prognosticating, and he was on the right side of that one for sure. So on this episode, so we're rounding out our latest season of Group Thinkers, where we've been focused in on nonprofits in the supply chain. And on this episode, I am really excited to welcome Polly Papsadore to the program. Polly, hi, Happy New Year. Good to see you.
Thank you. Happy New Year to you both as well. I'm thrilled to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. Polly, you and I have known each other 8 years. 8 years. And I know that because I remember 2014 was whenever our paths crossed and collided in somewhat. And so we're going to get into a little bit of your path here in a moment. But, you know, Polly, what I'm really excited about today is that, we're into 2022. And so we're still thinking about the supply chain and its impact on us, but I think we're already thinking about it in different ways. And so as we were just discussing beforehand, the purpose of our chat isn't to give a state of the state, but it's really to think more about and talk more about things that we can be doing as learnings from what we've experienced through the fourth quarter of 2021 and thinking ahead. So I'm thrilled for you to be able to bring your experience. Polly, Ronnie, you have heard Polly's name as well. Polly is a staple in the non-profit marketing industry. And amongst those that attend conferences in the greater DC area, it's very common when we have them in person. We're going to have them in person this year, that you would see Polly at those conferences, either on a stage or on a sidewalk running as an avid runner, and very, very visible because of that Ric Flair hair that you got going on too. So
right. It's longer now. It's post-pandemic, longer hairstyle, like many people.
Yeah, mine got shorter, I think, during the pandemic, but we keep it high and tight anyway. So Polly,
mine definitely got grayer.
Yeah. Got those little patches coming in, Ronnie.
Right. It's a new chapter for all of us.
Exactly. So here's how I want to lead off. I've known you for some time and had the chance to work with you, had the chance to work alongside you and those things. But our greater audience doesn't have the same depth. So I would love for Polly, for you to talk about your journey throughout your career and what brought you to PMG and kind of the role in the space that you sit in your current spot.
Sure. Wonderful. Great. Well, it's been a long and really interesting and exciting and fun career. So I feel very grateful for the career I've had thus far. So I've been in marketing my entire career, and I started in the technology and then the publishing space, and then working in technology publishing. Actually, one of those highlights was working for IDG Books Worldwide. We were the publisher of the original Dummies series of books, which started with computer titles and then rapidly expanded into every imaginable topic on the planet. So that was a rocket ship and a learning experience. And then from there, I co-owned an agency, Papsadore Direct Incorporated, and we worked in the technology and publishing space. And then that merged with another agency in Boston called Direct Results Group, and we did B2B and B2C work. And then I eventually moved over into the nonprofit space in 2005 working for L.W. Robbins Associates, and that was the precursor to the latest entity, which is RKD Group. So I had the honor to serve many wonderful clients with L.W. Robbins and RKD Group over 11 years. And I have been at PMG now for almost 5 years. Again, time flies, you know, and it's been so much fun. So at PMG, I am Senior Vice President of Business Strategy. So I'm really charged with growing the company. And that's growing the company through what we would call basic business development, as well as developing new products and services internally, and also looking for partnerships and even potentially acquisitions too. So that's what I am focused on now, and it just is even more fun. So it's a real honor, and we have a great portfolio of clients that we work with. And we have, just real quickly, we've got 4 business units within PMG. We've got a Postal Logistics Group, Mail Smart Logistics. We have MMI Direct, which is data processing and hygiene and merge purge work. Then we've got PMG, which is the actual direct mail production management team. And then we have the Engage Group, which is a digital marketing agency. So we've got those 4 groups. They all have their own clients, but we do share some clients. And more importantly, we just like to serve as a resource for the overall industry. So whether a group works with us or not, we want to point them in the best direction for resources that they can work with, whether they're an agency or a nonprofit. So it's just been an incredibly wonderful experience working at PMG and staying in this industry all these years. Again, I'm just totally honored and excited about the chapters ahead for all of us.
Yeah, I think that we don't think about enough that collegial aspect, and whether or not it's within a group like what you mentioned across the 4 business units at PMG, or across groups. You know, there's something that's special within this space of coming together, working together. You know, whether or not we think that the right approach is one direction or another direction, we're all in this in a way to accomplish some really complex problems of helping the greater good around us. And so yeah, it's a very fulfilling space, and it's fun to get to work alongside people like yourself, right?
Oh, great.
So,
And I would like to just give a shout out to some of the really strong associations out there. So as you know, because you and RKD Group are involved in all these organizations as well, I'm serving as president of the DMAW. This past year, I'm actually handing the gavel over to the new president in January, and very involved with the Bridge Conference and also the Nonprofit Alliance. I'll be serving on the DriftGo board again, starting in February. So there's just a lot of really great organizations. And again, it's all about strong collegial relationships, even among competitors. I like to see them as peers as opposed to competitors, because sometimes we share clients and we're all about helping each other out, because the ultimate goal is to lift up the nonprofit organizations that we serve and to support the wonderful work that they do. So again, yes, wonderful community to be a part of.
it's a really good space. It's a really good space. And it's a space that has been on a roller coaster for the last 20 months. And so the latest kind of loop-de-loop that we've gone through has been this whole supply chain thing. So, I was reading today, and in fact, I learned a new phrase today, which is the bullwhip effect. And so the bullwhip effect, is where multiple changes in the supply chain magnify each other. So there's distortion that happens from the endpoint and kind of backs all the way up, demand moving from wholesaler to manufacturer, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we have in many ways experienced the bullwhip effect. If you think about Indiana Jones, kind of cracking the bullwhip, that wave that goes through the entirety of the whip is where we've found ourselves. And so while we're not here to, as I said, give a state of the state, some of the latest things that we've seen across the space, we're still trying to figure out how to level supply and demand. We're trying to figure out how to level getting supply across, and now with the current surge of the latest variant, the Omicron variant, staffing challenges have had an impact in many areas. And so, from my point of view, Polly, and I'm very curious as to your perspective, but the immediacy is withstanding the current surge and then work to balance that or level that production rates with demand. Like that's the macro thesis of where we're at. And so there's some patience and some proactivity involved in that. In your capacity and from the conversations that you have across the space, I would love to know your thoughts and or how you stay on top of what's happening in close to real time.
Sure. And I would give an example of the bullwhip effect is the latest, which is ports are opening up, right? Because we have seen some improvement over the last several weeks with the ports opening up, with overseas products coming in. But then because of the trucking shortage, they're at the port and it's really hard to get them out of there and on their way. So that's an example of, one area might improve, but there's still problems in other areas that continue to impact the programs in a pretty significant way. So I'd love to start on a high note, and that high note is that it's January 11th when we're talking together today, and we've gotten some really positive reports from some of our largest clients about how their direct mail programs have absolutely exceeded expectations in terms of goals for 2021. And that's despite all of these issues that we're talking about today, and even delays with the Postal Service too. So that's really encouraging for everyone, because maybe some of the smaller nonprofits out there are just feeling discouraged and concerned about maybe potentially cutting back on their mail programs moving forward, because it's just the environment is just too challenging. But I would encourage them to keep moving forward, and direct mail is still a very solid channel. And again, these are top brand nonprofits that I'm referring to that had stellar results in 2021. So that's very encouraging. And in terms of other things that I'd like to talk about today, I would say that as we were talking about just a few moments ago about what's so wonderful about this industry that we're in and the partnerships that have been happening across the space, is that now more than ever, those partnerships are really important. So when it comes to production, because these challenges have become chronic, and individual factors change, in the situation is changing in certain areas every day. But what we've learned from this experience over the last 24 months is that if you're working with an agency partner like an RKD group or any of the other wonderful agencies out there that serve our space, really rely on them. And if they've got production teams internally, that's great. Or if they're working with outside production management partners, or you're working directly with them, really lean on them right now to advise you on what's going on and how you can mitigate these ongoing challenges. So those are some of the things that I wanted to talk about today. And if it's okay with you, Justin, I'll go into some of those points. Does that work for you?
That would be wonderful. And just as you serve those up, echoing that idea of leaning on your partners, now is certainly a time for trust and transparency. And it doesn't mean that it comes without difficult conversations, which life has
Right.
always had those things. But I think it peels back some of the opportunities to be transparent and to really exercise trust. And so, man, what a unique opportunity we have to be in this space in a time to where there's an elevated component of trust amongst partners, right? That's something that I don't think we should overlook. So yes, please share some of the things that you're seeing and hearing.
Definitely, and I agree with you 100%. That was a theme that I was going to weave in, so thank you for bringing that up. And I would say that one of the most important things is making sure that you're, and this is something that we encourage in regular times, is that to make sure that your production team is involved in the strategy and creative planning of your program. Now it's really important. It's actually critical because the production team can help guide you about problem areas whether it's certain paper stocks or formats or certain printing techniques. They will know all of that and will be able to advise you. And then the other thing is just in general, the whole concept of longer lead times is super important. And I'll go into a few details there, but that starts at the beginning with your annual planning and how you kick off individual tracks or individual campaigns. It affects everything. And the other thing is just educating your teams and your leadership on an ongoing basis about what's going on in the industry and encouraging people to use third-party resources, something like this too, so that any skeptical leaders or supervisors can realize that, no, it's not just my partner that's telling me this, or it's just not my teammate. It's other leaders and authorities in the industry. So I even think of getting, because it is such a critical time, maybe doing some sort of a regular update for your leadership and your team and being proactive about that. And that could be an internal newsletter or an email or a 15-minute meeting or however you want to do it. But since things are changing so much and leadership should be aware of these things, that's just something that we recommend, because Justin, we're like steeped in this every day, right? But not everybody is. And we're still encountering situations where, say, a client contact doesn't realize some certain issue in the industry could have an impact on some individual project that they're working on. So the ongoing education, and don't assume that everybody's immersed in this information every day like we are. So that was those are some of the big points, and then getting into some recommendations too. First of all, on the approval processes, which I mentioned earlier, consider tightening up those approval processes on the nonprofits end, even if you're have a creative team, internal or with an agency. Consider reducing the number of people who review and touch your mail piece, copy, and creative, and the number of rounds of edits. And really just re-engineering your processes. And these are things that can help moving forward after we get out of this pandemic too. It'll just be a more efficient process. And strive for accuracy and clear direction to streamline those processes and reduce the risk of errors. We're in a really high pressure environment. And if the nonprofit team and the agency team aren't buttoned up, and then new information is sent on an hourly basis to the production team, which is sometimes viewed as the caboose, well, that just slows everything down. If we have to switch gears, or if there's an error that should have been caught at an earlier stage, or if there's a shift in strategy at the last minute when things are in the direct mail production facility or even in the mailing facility, or data processing is already done and now there's new segmentation. Really striving to avoid those scenarios in this environment that we're in. And then being forward.
Polly, it's
Yes.
interesting. Just a note on that. I was actually reading a piece. One of the groups that is outside of our space, but that I like to stay connected to their content is McKinsey, the global consulting firm, and one, it's just the quality of work that they do and the quality of content that they put out. And I was reading a piece from some of their new leadership that talked about how amongst their business strategy, that they are now elevating quickness in decision making as one of the important characteristics for leaders versus tenure. So it's really interesting as an idea. Just because you've been there, you've been in it, does not necessarily mean that you are quick to make decisions. And it feels like much of what you're talking about in terms of these tips of just leaning on partners, making sure that production is not the caboose, that they're closer to the engine, the longer lead times, the constant education. There is not just proactivity, but there is a quickness to the proactivity that is really required as a part of that. That we're all in logistics at this point of trying to keep communication and information flowing.
Yes, and that's a great point, Justin, because even earlier today, I had a conversation with one of our lead production managers, and she was mentioning that she's guiding her clients when we're putting together a whole production schedule, which has deliverables on the nonprofits part. And there might be one cycle of approvals where they desire a 48-hour window to turn something around. And so she's gently guiding them. In this environment, we really have to compress that. So, one of the recommendations is, can you look to see who's in that approval loop and, reduce the number of people so it can be more, it can happen more quickly. But that's exactly to your point. Those days are over where something's going to sit for 48 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And just kind of doing a practicality check too. I mean, really, if you've already approved a strategy and a concept and maybe a copy deck at this point, why would you need 48 hours? And why do certain people need to be touching it at this point? This is also an opportunity to really empower the people that are doing the work. And again, talking about trust, even trust your own team. In this environment, you really need to empower and trust your own team to get things done so that you don't have these bottlenecks, which we simply can't afford in this situation.
Polly, as you think about this, going forward, looking ahead, more than just the next few months, do you think there will be some sort of long-term changes coming out of this to the way print production is done? Like, are we going to be sharper and better at this because of this? Like the way we're seeing digital take over with the pandemic, are we going to see something similar with the supply chain?
Sure. I think some of our suppliers, so for instance, at PMG, we have about 35 core suppliers that we work with on a very regular basis. And then we've got over 100 that we work with in general, or 125. And I'm sure that some of them are adapting better to this situation, this new reality, right, than others. And the production teams that are working all day long putting together these programs, that's not me. I'm not doing that, but they probably already have a really good sense of, all right, which of our suppliers, which are all trusted and that we've been working with for a long time, are doing well in this environment and thriving and figuring things out, and which are the ones that are struggling. And it's a really good point because, you know, at some point we'll want to take a step back, as we always do as part of our ongoing supplier evaluation program, is have conversations about that and always continue to look for new suppliers too. Are there others that we're not aware of, that we're not working with yet, that are really innovating and have succeeded in these difficult, challenging conditions? So that's a good point. But right now, I think we're just so grateful for all of our suppliers, because if you saw what the hoops that people are jumping through, not only the team that I work with, you know, many unbelievable, you know, expert production people, many of whom worked in production facilities before they came to work at PMG, the troubleshooting and the problem solving they're doing, but then what's actually happening on these plant floors. And again, thinking about, a lot of them have labor shortages, and because of various delays in materials, their schedules are all out of whack, but they're still getting this stuff out and they're working so hard. And what I would love to do, and this is kind of like a random sidebar here, but I would love to do some sort of like production professional appreciation celebration that maybe we could get all the industry associations to join in on, because they are the people that are behind the scenes doing this very difficult work. So it's not only production management folks at our agencies and at production management companies like PMG, but it's actually all those suppliers, the factors of production, the people that are working in the warehouses and you know, running the machines. And it's just so hard right now, and they're really doing a good job. But absolutely, this is an opportunity for innovation and improvement. It's forcing us to do it. So good point, Ronnie. Going back to a few other things that I wanted to bring up. Let's see here. Oh, on the postal logistics side, again, mentioning about the trucking shortage, that's affecting all, you know, every step of the production process, because again, behind the scenes materials may be being shipped from a printer to a mail shop, that kind of thing. But even on the postal logistics side, what we're seeing is any mail that's being drop shipped, as opposed to say commingling, that the drop shippers are only picking up 2 times per week at the mailing facilities versus the normal 3 times per week. And this is due to a truck driver shortage and fuel cost increases. There's a consolidation there. So that's one of the reasons that mail delivery is slower. So it's not just the postal service, and once it's actually in the USPS mail stream, but it's for mailers that are consolidating their mail and drop shipping it to a postal facility that's closer to the actual end destination. That is slower. So again, that's just something to keep in mind, and a reason to build in even more lead time. And then in terms of talking about strategy and creative, and what we're finding is we have this whole knowledge base now that it's constantly changing, but you know, certain formats to avoid, certain processes that are good or not as ideal in our current environment, certain paper stocks that may be problematic. For instance, the environmental papers, that's an issue right now with the FSC certified papers, and some of our larger clients are being very strategic in procuring and paying for and inventorying large supplies of those paper stocks so that they have them on hand for the year ahead. And obviously, smaller nonprofits do not have the wherewithal, the financial capacity to be strategic about that. But again, work with your partners. And one of the things that groups that have environmental requirements, there's different percentages of the post-consumer waste content in papers. And if you're comfortable with a lower amount and you can still put that authorization or credential on the materials, then consider doing that. And just look, being flexible about paper stocks in general is something that we've learned, and continue to do that moving forward. Let's see, a few other tips, just getting it out there in the community, is right now envelopes are anywhere from 10 to 12 weeks lead time. So we're finding that some of our smaller nonprofits, again, they may not have the resources to be plugged into the industry like we are, but we're proactively letting those clients know, especially if they're on a schedule to, for instance, only mail acquisition or larger volumes a few times a year. We're proactively giving them the heads up about the lead time on the envelopes, because some of these folks haven't even thought about doing their kickoffs yet for these campaigns. So again, kind of just helping them along and providing that guidance. And then even things like we're on acquisition campaigns, Justin, the longer lead times and the mailing delays are impacting list rental deadlines and mailing windows. So making sure you're working with your data partners to make the best of the situation, and look for flexibility in mailing windows too, because that's an ongoing issue. So, and then 3-month lead time for complex multi-component mailings that require overseas production. I was talking to one of our overseas suppliers recently, and they're doing a really good job. His latest stat is that 80% of their products are getting here on time, and they're streamlining their processes too, and working as hard as they can with their supplier partners in China to be as efficient as possible. But again, building in the lead time. And another thing is, clients are really curious now about exploring domestic premium production.
Right.
Because of the overseas issues, but the expense difference is astronomical. And also, there's still supply chain issues here, right?
Right.
Domestically.
It doesn't immediately solve for
It doesn't
one.
solve it. And,
Right.
and there could be some sort of component or material or ingredient that's still sourced overseas. So, so it's okay to ask, to your partners to explore domestically, but just to manage expectations that the price difference. We did a recent exercise on that, and the price was very significantly different, but our suppliers here thought, they were optimistic that their domestic pricing would go down significantly in the next few months. We'll see. But you just have to keep, it changes every day. Even another example of one of our production team members, they were sourcing envelopes for a smaller project. And the lead time on the envelopes were 10 days. But that was a smaller project, and obviously it's a certain type of envelope, and there's all kinds of different envelopes, right? There's pre-made envelopes, and then there's ones that are custom made for the project, and then there's all the different printing techniques on the envelopes. So again, don't be complacent. You need to realize that each individual component may have a different lead time and different challenges. So always plan for a longer lead time. And
yeah. It's so funny, Ronnie, you're kind of alluding to earlier, hey, at some point, does this go back, right? At some point, do the lead times get shorter? And I don't know the answer to that. I do know that in my work in marketing in general, that whether or not it's lead times or production times, et cetera, that I don't know, it feels like it's rare that whenever you let out the leash for the dog, that you take the leash back. It seems like instead of worrying about whether or not it's going to go back to what it was, it's your energy is better used in managing where you are and thinking ahead to how you can be even more proactive and more strategic versus dwelling on where we were and the back in my day, even if the back in my day was 2019, right? So it's interesting, Polly, as you're talking about it. Polly, we've had conversations over the years where there's been this thematic in the space that we're all storytellers, right? We're all here telling stories of these great causes, and then all of a sudden we were all analysts, right? Because data is infused into everything that we do. And I don't know if we're all logistics managers at this point, but we're all managing information that we have today to stay on the front of the evolution as opposed to being caught behind that evolution.
And I agree. And I would say that it's like a mindset shift, that implementation needs to be viewed as a strategy. So we actually have a term at PMG. We like to say that we're focused on strategic implementation. And that resonates now. Maybe before we would have to convince people that, oh, okay, I get that. I understand that. You're not offering a commodity. Well, now any implementation is strategic. It has to be. And so that point I made about the larger nonprofits making the decision to purchase large volumes of paper for all of 2022, or say some portion of it, that goes up to the senior leadership of the organization. So implementation is strategic, and I would like us to retain that concept even beyond the pandemic, because it's part of the programs and it's a huge expense. So you should be looking at it strategically. And I also would love to, coach and educate strategists and creative people and analysts to view it that way and to respect it too, because sometimes as the caboose isn't always respected, and it absolutely is critical to our ultimate mission here. So that's our job, and we're happy to be evangelists about that, and more and more people understand that now. So it's all positive. We are learning so much and growing so much, and we should pat each other on the back that everybody's doing such a great job, working very, very hard. And we're obviously highly motivated because we have an incredible sense of purpose for the work that we do. But we're doing a great job for our community and for our nonprofits and for the people and animals and environments that they serve. So it's been an incredible experience.
Yeah, it really has. And Paula, just as we wrap, and to your point, as we move, which I do believe we will move from pandemic to endemic. I don't know when, but we will move from pandemic to endemic. And as we normalize, I really do think that we will not rush to forget the things that we have learned about our adaptability. And it's the things that the nonprofit space learned in the early and mid-aughts about disaster response transformed and propelled digital from nothing to something over the course of its first 5 to 10 years. And so now, and you could say the same thing with the economic collapse in 2008, that there was a key set of learnings that we took away from that in terms of staying in the market, to understand that there may be outside volatility, but ultimately that people still want to support causes and help those around them. And yeah, we've had to be reminded of that multiple times since 2008, 2009. But as we've gone through this last 2-year stint, I do believe we're going to emerge with a new set of learnings on the speed of decision making and data as an asset. And as you said, as having each component in our own cycle of campaign execution better understood for where they sit in driving strategy, right? And so, man, that's valuable. That's a good thing for us, a good place for us to be.
Absolutely.
Well,
I agree with
I would hope that you didn't disagree, because then we'd have to, Ronnie would have to mediate. It would be a whole different scene. Polly, I am, for Ronnie and I, we're so thrilled that you could make time to join us today, and that you could bring a different perspective of someone who is connected so closely to the production space, but then also can be able to speak strategically to things throughout the process. So thank you for your time and your tips and your wisdom and your positivity.
Oh, you're very welcome. It's my pleasure. And yes, anything I can do to give back to the industry. So let me know how else I can help.
Yeah, that's wonderful and very well said, and a great way to characterize the spirit that Polly brings to the space. And so, just as we wrap this episode, like I mentioned at the outset, we got a couple more episodes that are highlighting the nonprofit marketing and the supply chain, and so be on the lookout for those. Plenty of other resources as we get into 2022 on Arcade Group's website and on our blog, tied to trends and some things to look out for, some pieces on adaptability that play in line with what Polly shared today. So do yourself a favor and be sure to check those out. And that does it for this episode. Ronnie, have I missed anything?
I don't think so. I think you got it covered. I mean, it's like this whole episode's been like the Scouts motto of always be prepared, I feel like.
That's right. Exactly.
That's very good. Very good. All right. Well, appreciate you both. Thanks for the time today. And thanks for everyone listening and tuning into this episode. We can't wait to see you again. So we'll see you next time. See you down the road.
Thank you both.